The council chamber was enormous. It looked like a crystal palace floating in space. Through the clear walls, Deho could see stars shining in the darkness. He had been coming to this room for 30 years. Today would be his last time. Deho stood in the center of the chamber. Around him sat the representatives of 23 alien species. Some looked like crystals. Others had scales or fur or skin that changed colors. They all looked down at him from their high seats. That was the way the council worked. The older species sat higher. The younger species stood below. High Chancellor Thex spoke first. His body was made of living crystal that sparkled when he moved. His voice sounded like breaking glass. Ambassador Deho, we have called you here about the Vrenth crisis. The Outer Rim worlds are under attack. The Council needs Earth's help. Deho had heard this before, many times. What kind of help? He asked quietly. We need 3 battle fleets, Thex said, and 60% of your engineering teams. The Vrenth are destroying our defense stations. Only humans can repair them fast enough. Deho looked at the papers in front of him. 3 battle fleets meant sending 30,000 human soldiers. 60% of engineers meant taking them from human colonies that needed them too. And who will protect our worlds while our fleets are gone? He asked. Trade Minister Veloth laughed. He was an amphibious creature with wet skin that glistened under the lights. Your worlds? Ambassador, this is about the greater good. Sometimes the younger species must make sacrifices for the Council. The greater good. Deho had heard those words so many times they had lost their meaning. The greater good meant humans doing the hard work. The greater good meant human soldiers dying far from home. The greater good meant human engineers working without sleep, while alien supervisors took credit for their work. We have given enough, Deho said. His voice was calm and steady. For 200 years, Earth has served the Council. We have fought your wars. We have fixed your machines. We have solved your problems. And what have we received? Thex's crystal body flashed with anger. You received the honor of serving the Council. You received protection and knowledge and a place among the civilized species. Deho closed his briefcase. The click echoed in the huge chamber. He stood up slowly. He was 62 years old. His back hurt from standing for hours in these meetings. His eyes were tired from reading alien contracts that always favored the Council. His heart was tired from begging for respect that never came. We're done here, he said. The chamber went silent. Veloth stopped laughing. Thex's crystal body stopped flashing. No one spoke. They thought Deho was being dramatic. They thought he would come back tomorrow and apologize and give them what they wanted. They always got what they wanted from humans, but Deho walked to the door. He did not look back. He did not make threats. He did not give speeches. He just left. Outside the chamber, he pressed his communication device. Send Protocol Omega, he said. Send it to everyone. Across the galaxy, humans received the message. 2 simple words appeared on their screens. Come home. Captain Minji was on the bridge of her warship when the message arrived. She was 43 years old and had commanded defense fleets for 15 years. Right now, her 17 ships were protecting Kelleran trade routes. It was boring work. Pirates would appear. Her ships would chase them away, and the Kelleran merchants never said thank you. She read the message twice. Then she looked at her crew. They were tired. They had been away from Earth for 2 years. They had fought 12 battles protecting alien cargo ships. 5 crew members had died in the last battle. The Council sent a formal letter of appreciation. They did not come to the funeral. All ships, Minji said into her microphone. Plot a course for Earth, we're going home. Her crew cheered. It was the happiest sound she had heard in months. The 17 warships turned away from the trade routes and began their journey home. Behind them, Kelleran merchant ships immediately sent distress calls. There were no human ships to protect them anymore. On the Quellan homeworld, Chief Engineer Hyunwoo was working on Atmospheric Processor Number 4. The machine was huge, as tall as a building. It cleaned the planet's air and made it safe to breathe. Without these machines, the Quellan people would die. Hyunwoo and his team of 200 engineers had been maintaining 7 processors for 15 years. It was hard work. The machines were old and broke down often. The Council never sent enough money for proper repairs. So Hyunwoo and his team improvised. They created solutions with whatever materials they had. They worked day and night. The Quellan supervisors went home at 5 o'clock. The humans stayed until the job was done. When the message came, Hyunwoo was covered in oil and grease. He climbed down from the machine and gathered his team. "We're leaving," he told them. "Pack your things. We have 6 hours." Administrator Plenth came running. He was a Quellan bureaucrat who had never touched a machine in his life. "You can't leave," he shouted. "Who will maintain the processors?" Hyunwoo looked at him. "You will," he said calmly. "I've left all the instructions on your computer system. The processors are in standby mode. They'll run for about 3 months before they start breaking down. I suggest you learn fast," Plenth laughed nervously. "But you care about this work. You've spent 15 years here. You wouldn't just abandon it." Hyunwoo picked up his tool bag. "We cared," he said. "But no one cared about us. There's a difference." He walked away. His entire team followed him. In a research laboratory on the ship called Luminous Dawn, Dr. Soman was working on a cure for a disease. She was 32 years old and brilliant. She had already developed treatments for 3 alien genetic disorders. But if you looked at the research papers, her name was never listed as the lead scientist. That honor went to senior researcher Quillix, who mostly sat in his office and took credit for her work. The Protocol Omega message appeared on her screen during an important experiment. Soman looked at the test tubes in front of her. She was so close to finishing the cure. It would save millions of lives. But those lives belonged to people who treated her like a servant. She saved all her research files to her personal drive. Then she deleted everything from the lab computers. She packed her equipment carefully. Quillix came running into the lab. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "The Vorthan plague cure. You can't stop now. Only you understand how the protein sequencing works." Soman stopped at the door. She looked back at him. "Then perhaps you should have put my name on the research papers," she said quietly. Then she left. All across Council space, the same thing was happening. Human soldiers packed their gear and boarded their ships. Human engineers shut down their projects and saved their documentation. Human scientists closed their labs. Human diplomats cleared out their offices. Human merchants recalled their trade ships. Human doctors left their hospitals. They didn't make threats. They didn't demand apologies. They didn't give dramatic speeches about justice or respect. They simply stopped working and went home. Within 48 hours, human personnel were leaving from 847 council installations across 200 systems. The galaxy barely noticed at first. Humans had always been so reliable, so quiet, so willing to do whatever was asked. No one thought they would actually leave. In the council chamber, High Chancellor Thex called an emergency meeting. "This is clearly a negotiation tactic," he announced. "The humans are trying to force us to give them better terms. We will not be manipulated. They will return when they realize we will not bend to their demands," Trade Minister Veloth agreed. "Let them go. We managed perfectly well before humans joined the council. We will manage again." But in the back of the chamber, a young warrior named Rexith sat quietly. He had fought alongside human soldiers. He had watched human engineers solve impossible problems. He had seen human diplomats prevent wars with patient conversation. He knew something the senior council members did not know. Humanity was not negotiating. They were done, and soon the council would understand exactly what they had lost. 2 weeks passed. The council barely noticed the humans were gone. Then the problem started. Trade Minister Veloth sat in his office looking at reports. His hands were shaking. The report said that 70% of the shipping lanes were now dangerous. Pirates were attacking merchant ships. Before, human warships had protected these routes. Now there were no human warships. The council's own military was busy fighting the Vrenth. No one was left to stop the pirates. Veloth called High Chancellor Thex. "We need to send our defense forces to protect the trade routes," he said urgently. "Our forces are at the Vrenth front," Thex replied. "They cannot leave." Then who was protecting the trade routes before? Veloth asked, though he already knew the answer. "The humans," Thex said quietly. Veloth felt sick. The humans had been doing the boring, dangerous work of keeping the trade routes safe. They had been doing it for decades, and he had never even thought about it. He had just assumed the routes were safe because they had always been safe. Now he understood. They had been safe because humans made them safe. But the trade routes were not the only problem. All across council space, machines were breaking down. Communication systems stopped working. Power stations flickered and went dark. Water treatment plants started making strange noises. Transportation hubs could not coordinate their schedules. The council sent their own engineers to fix the problems. The engineers looked at the machines and felt confused. Everything was so complicated. There were patches on top of patches, improvised fixes that somehow worked, jury-rigged solutions that made no sense but kept things running. One young engineer found a maintenance log on a power station. It was 40,000 pages long. Every repair, every adjustment, every small fix was documented, all written by humans. The engineer stared at the log and realized something terrible. The humans had not just been maintaining machines. They had been understanding machines, and that knowledge took years to learn. You could not just read it in a book. Director Jisoo sat in her office on Earth. She was the head of Earth's intelligence service. Her job was to know what was happening in the galaxy. Right now, she was watching the news feeds from Council Space. She did not look happy, but she did not look surprised either. The trade routes are collapsing, she said to the people in the room. Around her sat Captain Minji, Dr. Soman, Chief Engineer Hyunwoo, and Ambassador Daeho. They were all back on Earth now. Infrastructure is failing across 80 systems, and 3 territorial disputes just turned violent. The disputes we were mediating? Daeho asked. Yes, Jisoo confirmed. Without our diplomats, the old grudges came back. 2 species are about to go to war over a mining colony. Should we help? Someone asked. Daeho shook his head. We spent 2 centuries warning them. They chose not to listen. They called us primitive. They said we were too emotional to understand galactic politics. Let them solve it themselves. The room fell silent. They all knew people were suffering in council space. But they also remembered being treated like servants. They remembered working without rest while aliens took credit. They remembered losing friends in battles for colonies that were not even human. Sometimes you had to let people face the consequences of their choices. On the research vessel Luminous Dawn, senior researcher Quilix tried to continue Dr. Soman's work. He had her documentation. He followed every step exactly. But nothing worked. The protein sequences would not form correctly. The test results made no sense. After 5 days of failure, Quilix understood. The documentation showed what Soman did, but it did not show how she thought. It did not show the intuitive problem-solving that came from decades of experience. It did not show the 100 small decisions she made based on subtle observations. Documentation could not replace expertise. He checked the other research labs. The story was the same everywhere. Projects that humans had been leading were now stopped. The alien scientists who had taken credit for the work could not continue without the humans who actually did the work. The council's medical director sent an urgent report. Without human researchers, they had lost 70% of their pharmaceutical development and 90% of their genetic therapy programs. In the council chamber, Councillor Rexith stood up to speak. He was young for a council member, only 45. He had spent years working with humans in the military. He knew what they were capable of. He also knew that the senior council members were making a terrible mistake. High Chancellor, he said carefully, we need to acknowledge the situation. The humans were not just workers. They were essential to our civilization. We need them back. Thex's crystal body flashed with irritation. Councillor Rexith, we managed for 3,000 years before humans joined us. We will manage again. This is temporary difficulty while we adjust. With respect, High Chancellor, we did not manage. We stagnated. Human innovation drove our progress for 2 centuries. Human labor maintained our infrastructure. Human diplomacy prevented our conflicts. We took all of it for granted. Enough! Thex's voice cracked like breaking ice. I will not hear this defeatist talk. The council is strong. We do not need humans. They need us. They will return when they realize they cannot survive alone. But Rexith was not convinced. He had watched human warships coordinate complex battle tactics. He had seen human engineers repair battle damage in hours that would have taken his people weeks. He had known human soldiers who died protecting alien worlds while their own families were undefended. Humans did not need the council. The council needed humans, and the council had thrown them away. On the Quellan homeworld, medical director Kyungmi walked through her hospital. More and more patients were coming in with breathing problems. The atmosphere was degrading faster than Chief Engineer Hyunwoo had predicted. The air was becoming harder to breathe. She went to the maintenance room where the life support systems were kept. Administrator Plenth was there, staring at a computer screen. He looked like he had not slept in days. Can you fix it? Kyungmi asked. Plenth shook his head. The documentation is here, all of it. But I don't understand it. The humans wrote down what they did, but they didn't write down why. Every decision they made was based on experience I don't have. He looked at her with frightened eyes. We're going to lose patience because I can't maintain the machines. Kyungmi tried to contact Dr. Somin. Maybe she would help, just for the patient's sake. But the message came back undelivered. All human communication channels were closed. Earth had shut its doors. They were not answering calls. They were not reading messages. They were simply gone. That night, 3 patients died. They died because the life support machines failed and no one knew how to fix them fast enough. Kyungmi sat in her office and cried. She had never questioned the way things worked. Humans fixed the machines. Quellens ran the hospital. That was just how it was. She had never thought about what would happen if the humans left. She had never said thank you. She had never learned their names. On Earth, Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her merchant ship. It was docked at Mars Station. She used to run supply routes through 6 sectors of Council space. Now she was running supplies between Earth, Mars, and the human colonies. It was less dramatic work, but it felt good. She was helping her own people now. Her second officer came to stand beside her. Captain, I heard that food shipments are failing in Council space. Colonies are going hungry because no one knows the distribution networks. Yuna nodded. We built those networks over 50 years. We knew every port authority, every refueling station, every shortcut through space. You can't just hand that over to someone else and expect it to work. Should we go back and help? Yuna was quiet for a long time. Then she shook her head. They never valued what we did. They thought anyone could do it. Let them try. Maybe when they failed, they'll understand what they had. Back in the council chamber, reports kept coming in. Trade was down 40%. Infrastructure failures were reported in 80 systems. Research programs were stalled. Diplomatic conflicts were escalating. Medical supplies were running low. Food distribution was failing. High Chancellor Thex read each report with growing unease, but he would not admit the truth. The council was strong. The council was ancient. The council did not need a primitive species like humanity. He kept telling himself this. But late at night, alone in his chambers, he wondered if he was wrong. The cracks were showing, and they were getting bigger. Deep Space Station Vortex Prime was home to 50,000 beings. It floated in empty space between 3 star systems. The station was old, built 200 years ago when humans first joined the council. Human engineers had kept it running all that time. They had fixed every leak, repaired every crack, and improvised solutions to problems that should have destroyed the station years ago. Now the humans were gone. And the station's power system was failing. The lights flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency power kicked in, but it would not last long. The life support systems began to fail. Air was not circulating properly. Temperature controls stopped working. People started to panic. Counselor Rexith was nearby when the distress call came. He immediately ordered his military ships to help. But his ships were warships, not evacuation vessels. They could carry maybe 10,000 people if they packed them in tight. There were 50,000 people on the station. Rexith's ships worked desperately. They loaded people as fast as they could. Families were separated. Children cried for their parents. Old people could not move fast enough. The ships took off as soon as they were full and came back for more. But time was running out. Rexith himself stayed on the station, helping people to the evacuation points. The air was getting thin. It was hard to breathe. He saw a mother holding her baby, both struggling for air. He got them onto a ship. Then he went back for more. In the end, they saved 40,000 people. 10,000 died when the life support failed completely. Rexith stood on his ship and watched Vortex Prime go dark and silent. 10,000 souls lost because no one knew how to maintain an aging station. Because the humans who did know were gone, the news spread across the galaxy. You could not hide 10,000 deaths. The council tried to blame the station's age. They tried to blame faulty equipment. But everyone knew the truth. Human engineers had kept that station alive for decades. Without them, it died. And 10,000 beings died with it. On Earth, Governor Jiho of Mars Colony watched the news reports. His face was grim. He was a kind man who believed in helping others. He had voted against Protocol Omega. He had argued that humanity should stay and try to negotiate better terms. Now he watched footage of the evacuation and felt torn apart inside. We could have prevented this, he said to Admiral Taejun. The Admiral commanded Earth's home defense fleet. He was a careful, cautious man who did not believe in taking unnecessary risks. Yes, Taejun agreed. If we were still there, maintaining their stations, fighting their battles, fixing their problems, while they treat us like servants. How many humans died doing that work, Governor? How many human engineers died in station accidents while alien supervisors sat in safe offices? But those 10,000 people did nothing wrong, Jiho protested. They were just living their lives. And the 83 crew members Captain Minji lost? They were just doing their jobs, protecting alien trade routes. Did anyone care about them? Taejun's voice was hard. I am sorry for those 10,000, truly. But we cannot keep sacrificing human lives to save aliens who see us as tools. Jiho had no answer. Both men were right. Both men were wrong. War is easy when you can hate your enemy. This was harder. This was watching people suffer and knowing you could help, but choosing not to because helping had cost too much for too long. Meanwhile, the food crisis was getting worse. Trade Minister Veloth had tried to fill the gap left by human merchant ships. His fleet was large and expensive, but it was also completely useless. The first convoy got lost. They used old navigation data and ended up 3-star systems off course. By the time they found the right colony, the fresh food had rotted. The second convoy arrived on time but at the wrong port. It took 2 weeks to redirect the ships. The third convoy was raided by pirates because they did not know which routes were safe. 15 systems reported food shortages. People went hungry. Some colonies started rationing. Others tried to grow their own food, but many worlds did not have good soil. They had always imported food. The human merchants had made it so easy that no one thought about it. Now those merchants were gone and people were starving. Veloth sat in his office and stared at reports. He had been so proud of his merchant fleet. Now he realized his fleet had only carried luxury goods and high-value cargo. Humans had handled the boring work of food distribution, medical supplies, and basic materials. They had done it so efficiently that no one noticed it was being done. Now everyone noticed, because it was not being done anymore. On the Quellan homeworld, things were even worse. The atmospheric processors were breaking down exactly as Chief Engineer Hunwoo had warned. Administrator Plenth and his team had tried everything. They read the documentation. They watched training videos. They called in experts from other worlds. Nothing worked. The machines were too complex. Every part connected to every other part. When you fixed one problem, you created 2 more. The humans had understood this. They had spent years learning how the machines worked together. You could not learn that from documentation. Medical Director Kyungmi watched her hospital fill with patients. Respiratory illness was spreading. The elderly and the very young were most vulnerable. She did everything she could with the resources she had. But it was not enough. More patients came every day. She did not have enough beds, enough medicine, enough staff. One night, a little girl died. She was only 6 years old. Her lungs could not handle the degraded air. Kyungmi held the girl's hand as she took her last breath. The girl's parents wept. Kyungmi wept with them. This was not supposed to happen. The Quellan homeworld was supposed to be safe. The air was supposed to be clean. Humans had made it clean, and now they were gone. In the council chamber, High Chancellor Thex finally admitted they had a crisis. He sent a message to Earth. It was not a request. It was a demand. The message said that all human personnel must return immediately. They must resume their duties. The disruption of council operations was unacceptable. Earth must send an apology for this insubordination. The message reached Earth's government. Prime Minister Yoonji read it in a meeting with her advisors. Ambassador Daeho sat beside her. So did Director Jisoo and Defense Minister Boyoung. They passed the message around. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Yoonji asked, "They are demanding our return? Demanding an apology? After 10,000 deaths at Vortex Prime? After food shortages and medical crises and infrastructure collapse? They learned nothing? They still think they are in charge," Daeho said quietly. "They think we are being difficult. They do not understand that we are done being their tools." Boyoung leaned forward. "What is our response, Prime Minister?" Yoonji thought for a moment. Then she said, "No response. Delete the message. We will not answer demands. When they are ready to treat us as equals, they know where to find us. Until then, we maintain silence." The message was deleted. Earth sent no reply. The council waited for an answer that never came. On Mars, the construction continued. New factories were being built. New colony ships were being assembled. New research facilities were opening. All the resources that once went to council projects now went to human development. Engineers who had maintained alien infrastructure now built for humanity. Scientists who had researched alien diseases now focused on human medicine. Soldiers who had defended alien worlds now protected human colonies. Dr. Soman led a research team developing new medical treatments. She worked alongside other brilliant human scientists. They put their names on their papers. They took credit for their work. They were respected for their expertise. It felt strange at first. Then it felt right. Captain Yuna's merchant fleet expanded. New ships were being built every month. They carried goods between human colonies. They established new trade routes connecting Earth, Mars, and the outer settlements. Human commerce was booming. Without the burden of supporting the entire council, humans were prospering. Admiral Taejun's defense fleet grew stronger. New warships joined the fleet. Human engineers designed better weapons, faster engines, and stronger shields. No one was telling them to focus on council projects anymore. They could innovate freely. The defense perimeter around human space expanded steadily. Governor Jiho watched all this progress and felt conflicted. He was glad humanity was thriving, but he could not forget the faces of the refugees from Vortex Prime. He could not forget the reports of children dying from hunger and bad air. He believed humanity deserved respect, but he also believed in helping those who needed help. "How long do we make them suffer?" he asked Prime Minister Yoonji one day. Yoonji looked tired. Leading Earth was not easy. Every decision had consequences. "Until they learn," she said. "Until they understand what they took for granted. If we go back now, nothing changes. They will treat us the same way. We will be servants again. Our people will die in their wars again. This has to mean something, Jiho. The sacrifice has to mean something." Back in council space, the problems kept getting worse. More stations failed. More people went hungry. More conflicts erupted. The council that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was falling apart. And everyone finally understood why. Humans had been holding it together, and now humans were gone. 3 months after the humans left, the council chamber was half empty. Many species had stopped coming to meetings. They were too busy trying to save their own worlds. The Grand Alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was breaking apart. High Chancellor Thex stood at the center of the chamber. He looked old now. His crystal body had lost its shine. "The council must remain strong," he announced to the few representatives who still attended. "We have weathered crises before. We will weather this one." But no one was listening. The Kelleran Trade Federation announced they were leaving the council to focus on their own economic survival. 3 smaller species formed their own defensive alliance. The Wraith Military Command withdrew their forces from council control. One by one, the member species were abandoning the sinking ship. Trade Minister Veloth watched it all happen. He had spent his entire life believing in the council's superiority. Now he saw the truth. The council had not been strong. It had been dependent on a species they had treated as servants. "What did you think would happen?" he asked Thex quietly. Thex had no answer. That night, Councillor Rexith made a decision. He gathered a small group of council members who had actually worked with humans. Medical Director Kyungmi came from the Quellan homeworld. Senior Researcher Quillix came from the Luminous Dawn. Administrator Plenth came, looking haunted by his failures. A few others joined them. They were all junior members, people who had done real work instead of just giving speeches. "We need to go to Earth," Rexith said. "Not with demands. Not with orders. We need to ask them what it will take for them to return." "The High Chancellor will never approve this," Quillix said. "Then we do not ask for approval," Rexith replied. "The council is dying. If we wait for official permission, it will be too late." They took a small diplomatic vessel and left without authorization. It was a risk. They could be accused of treason. But watching people die while politicians argued seemed like a worse crime. When they reached Earth's star system, Admiral Taejun's defense fleet intercepted them immediately. Warships surrounded their small vessel. A voice came over the communication system. "This is Admiral Taejun of the Earth Defense Fleet. State your purpose." Rexith took a deep breath. "Admiral, we are here to listen. We are not here to make demands. We want to understand what we did wrong. We want to know what it would take for humanity to return." There was a long silence. Then Taejun said, "Wait here." An hour later, they received permission to land. They were taken to Geneva, to a conference room in Earth's government building. The delegation sat nervously waiting. Then the door opened. Ambassador Deho entered first. Then Captain Minji, Dr. Soman, and Chief Engineer Hyunwoo. They sat across the table from the alien delegation. The room was quiet and tense. Rexith spoke first. "We came to ask what it would take for you to return." The humans looked at each other. Finally, Captain Minji spoke. Her voice was hard. "Do you know how many of my crew died protecting your trade routes? 83 people. They had families. They had dreams. They died far from home, and no one from the council even came to their funerals." Rexith felt shame wash over him. "I did not know," he said quietly. "Of course you did not know," Minji said. "You never asked. You never cared. We were just tools to you." Dr. Soman spoke next. "I developed 17 medical treatments. My name appears on 0 research papers. At conferences, I was introduced as an assistant. Senior researcher Quillix took credit for my work." She looked directly at Quillix. "Do you even know what the treatments do? Or did you just read my summaries and present them as your own discoveries?" Quillix could not meet her eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I told myself I was leading the projects, but you were the one doing the science. I took credit because the council respects status over skill. I was wrong." Chief Engineer Hyunwoo spoke quietly, but his words cut deep. "Your people called my engineers at 3 in the morning to fix problems. Then they went home to sleep. We worked around the clock for 15 years. No one ever said thank you, not once. We were invisible to you." Administrator Plenth was crying now. "I watched patients die because I could not maintain the equipment you serviced. I had all your documentation, but I did not have your knowledge. I thought documentation was enough. I did not understand that expertise takes years to develop." Medical Director Kyung-mi spoke through her tears. "I dismissed you as technicians. I thought I was the important one because I was a doctor. But you knew things I never learned. You made decisions I did not even know needed to be made. I let a little girl die because I could not do your job. I never valued your work until it was gone." The room was silent except for the sound of crying. The alien delegation was finally understanding what they had done. They had not just ignored humans. They had exploited them. They had taken credit for human work. They had let humans die for council interests while treating them as less important. Ambassador Deho finally spoke. "You asked what it would take for us to return. Here is the truth. We do not want apologies. Apologies are just words. We want recognition. Real recognition." Prime Minister Yoonji entered the room. She had been watching from another room, listening to everything. Now she sat at the head of the table. "If humans maintain your infrastructure, humans must have authority over that infrastructure. If human scientists develop cures, human names go on the research. If human soldiers defend your space, human commanders make strategic decisions. Equal status in governance, veto power over deployments that endanger our colonies. Fair payment for services, respect." She paused and looked at each member of the delegation. "But understand this. We will not return immediately. Your civilization needs to learn what it means to function without taking others for granted. When you have truly learned that lesson, then we can discuss partnership, not before." Defense Minister Boyoung leaned forward. "And one more thing. We will never again be your servant species. We will be partners or we will be nothing. That is not negotiable." Rexith nodded slowly. "How long must we wait?" "As long as it takes," Yoonji said. "Show us that you understand. Show us that you value the work that keeps civilizations running. Show us that you respect expertise over status. When we see real change, we will talk again." The delegation left Earth with heavy hearts. They had come hoping for a quick solution. Instead, they got the truth. And the truth was hard. When they returned to council space, they found more chaos. High Chancellor Thex was trying to give another speech about council strength. But no one was listening anymore. The chamber was nearly empty. Rexith walked to the center of the chamber. "High Chancellor, I move that we dissolve the current council structure. It has failed."
"We need to build something new." Thex's crystal body flashed with anger.
"You dare suggest this? The council has stood for 3,000 years. And now it has fallen," Rexith said calmly. "Because we valued tradition over competence. Because we valued status over expertise. Because we took for granted the people who actually did the work. I have been to Earth, I have heard what they want. And they are right. We were wrong." The few remaining council members voted. The old structure was dissolved. Thex was offered an honorary retirement position. The era of the Galactic Council ended not with glory, but with quiet acknowledgement of failure. Trade Minister Veloth watched Thex leave the chamber. The former High Chancellor looked small and defeated. He never understood, Veloth said quietly. Civilizations are not built by those who speak about greatness. They are built by those who do the work. Across Council space, the surviving species began to rebuild, but this time they did it themselves. They learned to maintain their own machines. They learned to coordinate their own logistics. They learned to value the people who did the hard work. It was slow and painful, but it was real. Medical Director Kyungmi spent hours every day learning from the documentation Hyunwoo had left. She made mistakes. She failed often, but slowly she started to understand, and she taught others. They would never be as good as the human engineers, but they could keep their world alive. That was enough. On Earth, the debate continued. Governor Jiho still believed they should help. Defense Minister Boyoung still believed they should stay isolated. Prime Minister Yoonji walked a careful line between justice and compassion. They are learning, Ambassador Daeho reported after reviewing intelligence from Council space. Slowly, painfully, but they are learning to value what they took for granted. Is it enough? Hyunji asked. Not yet, Daeho said, but maybe soon. They need to prove the change is real. Not just words. Real systemic change, and so humanity waited. They built their own future. They thrived in isolation. But they also watched to see if the galaxy could learn from its mistakes. Watched to see if partnership might truly be possible. The power dynamic had shifted forever. Humans were no longer servants. They were people with choices, and that changed everything. 1 year after humanity walked away, Councillor Rexith stood before the assembly of 12 species. They met not in the grand crystal chamber of the old council, but in a simple conference room on a neutral station. The old symbols of power were gone. What remained were species who had learned hard lessons. We have prepared proposals for a new alliance, Rexith announced. Not a council, not a hierarchy, an alliance of equals. We have learned that civilizations are not built by those who command. They are built by those who do the work. He displayed the proposals on the screen. Equal voting rights, fair compensation for all services, recognition of expertise over status, shared authority in joint projects, the right for any species to refuse dangerous deployments. These were the things humans had asked for, things the old council would never have granted. Now we go to Earth, Rexith said, not to demand, not to beg, to offer partnership. The delegation traveled to Earth again. This time they brought documentation of everything they had changed. New labor laws, new recognition systems, new command structures that valued competence. They had restructured their entire civilization. The question was whether it was enough. Prime Minister Yoonji reviewed the proposals with her cabinet. Ambassador Daeho sat beside her. So did Defense Minister Boyoung, Director Jisoo, and Governor Jiho. They read every page carefully. They are offering what we asked for, Daeho observed. Equal partnership. Fair treatment, respect. On paper, Boyoung said skeptically. Words are easy. Following through is hard. Then we test it, Yoonji decided. We send small teams on limited contracts. We see if they honor their promises. If they do, we send more. If they do not, we walk away again. Jiho smiled. It was the first time in months. A pilot program, smart. Earth agreed to the pilot program. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo volunteered to lead a small team back to the Quellan homeworld, not as maintenance workers but as consultants. They would train local engineers. They would advise on repairs, but they would not do all the work themselves. The Quellan people had to learn to maintain their own world. When Hyunwoo arrived, Administrator Plenth met him at the spaceport. Plenth looked different, older, tired, but also more humble. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. We have learned so much, but we need your guidance. Show me what you have done, Hyunwoo said. They walked to the atmospheric processors. Hyunwoo was impressed. The Quellan engineers had stabilized 2 of the 7 machines. It was not perfect, but it was real progress. They had learned by doing. They had failed and tried again. They had not given up. This is good work, Hyunwoo said honestly. You are learning. Now let me show you some advanced techniques that will make your repairs more efficient. They worked together for weeks. Hyunwoo taught. The Quellan engineers learned. When technical decisions needed to be made, Plenth deferred to Hyunwoo's expertise. When Plenth tried to rush a repair for political reasons, Hyunwoo said no, and Plenth accepted it without complaint. The contract was clear. Humans had technical authority. That was the agreement. Dr. Soman returned to the Luminous Dawn research vessel under a new contract. This time her name was on every paper. She was listed as lead researcher. Senior researcher Quillix worked as her assistant. The role reversal was awkward at first, but Quillix had changed. He had spent a year trying and failing to do Soman's work. He understood now what real expertise meant. "Dr. Soman," he said on her first day back, "I owe you an apology, a real one. I took credit for your work. I dismissed your contributions. I was wrong. If you are willing to work with me again, I promise to recognize your expertise properly." Soman studied his face. She saw genuine regret. "I accept your apology. Let us move forward. But understand this. If you take credit for my work again, I will leave and I will not come back." "I understand," Quillix said, and he meant it. Captain Minji negotiated a new defense contract. Her fleet would protect certain trade routes, but only routes that connected to human colonies. Human security came first. Allied security came second. The contract paid 3 times what the old council had offered. And it included veto power over dangerous missions. If a deployment endangered human colonies, Minji could refuse. No questions asked. The first test came quickly. A request came for Minji's fleet to support an operation near Vrenth space. It was high risk. It would leave human colonies vulnerable. Minji reviewed the request and said no. She braced for pushback. Instead, Counselor Rexith simply replied, "Understood. We will handle it with our own forces." The contract was honored. Humans were partners now, not servants. 6 months into the pilot program, the Galactic Assembly held its founding session. 13 species signed the charter as equal partners. Ambassador Deho represented humanity. He sat at a round table, not on the floor looking up at superior species. Everyone had one vote. Everyone had one voice. It was something new, something better. The first order of business was a memorial for the 83 human soldiers who had died protecting alien interests, for the 10,000 souls lost at Vortex Prime, for all the humans who had served for 2 centuries without recognition. Their names were read aloud. Every single one. It took hours. No one left. Everyone listened. Counselor Rexith, now Assembly Speaker, gave the dedication speech. "We build this assembly on the foundation of a hard lesson. Civilization does not rest on authority or tradition. It rests on the labor and expertise of those who maintain it. We forgot that. We took for granted the people who did the work. We learned the truth the hard way. We will not forget again." The Assembly voted to establish labor protections across all member species, fair wages, recognition of expertise, safe working conditions, the right to refuse dangerous assignments. These were not suggestions. They were requirements. Any species that violated them would be expelled from the Assembly. On Earth, Prime Minister Yoonji watched the broadcast with her cabinet. The pilot program was working. Humans were being treated as equals. The contracts were being honored. Real change was happening. "Do we expand the program?" Director Jisoo asked. Yoonji nodded. "Carefully, gradually. We monitor every contract. At the first sign of the old patterns returning, we pull back. But yes, we can work with them. They have learned." Governor Jiho smiled with relief. His compassion had not been wrong. But neither had Boyoung's caution been wrong. Both were necessary. Justice and mercy, strength and kindness. That was the balance humanity had to maintain. Over the next year, more humans returned to Alliance space. Always with clear contracts. Always with proper recognition. Always as equals. The galaxy was different now. Smaller than the old council had been. Poorer in some ways, but stronger in the ways that mattered. Trade routes were rebuilt, but with proper security agreements. Research programs restarted with proper credit to all contributors. Infrastructure was maintained, with proper compensation for the maintainers. Defense pacts were formed with proper respect for all participants. The new civilization was built on partnership, not exploitation. Medical Director Kyungmi worked alongside human doctors now. She treated them as colleagues, not servants. She asked their opinions. She valued their expertise. When a human doctor named Minho suggested a new treatment protocol, Kyungmi listened carefully and implemented it. Because competence mattered more than species. That was the new way. On Mars, construction of new colony ships continued. Humanity was still growing, still expanding. But now they did it as part of a larger community, a community that respected them. Trade Minister Veloth established fair trade agreements with human merchants. Captain Yuna's fleet expanded into alliance space, connecting human colonies with alien worlds. But this time, the relationships were built on mutual benefit, not exploitation. One evening, Ambassador Deho stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Assembly Station. He looked out at the stars. Beside him stood Counselor Rexith. They had become friends over the past year. An unlikely friendship between a human who had been dismissed and an alien who had learned to listen. "Do you think it will last?" Rexith asked. "This new order we are building?" Deho considered the question carefully. "Maybe your people walked through fire. You learned the price of taking others for granted. That is not a lesson you forget easily, but you must teach it to the next generation." They did not feel the pain. "They must learn from your experience." "We will," Rexith promised. "We are changing our education systems. Children are learning about the collapse, about why it happened, about what we lost when we lost humanity. They will know," Deho smiled. "Then perhaps it will last. Perhaps we built something better from the ashes of something broken." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the ships come and go, human ships and alien ships working together, building together, growing together. The galaxy had learned that civilizations are built by those who do the work, not those who give orders. And that lesson, hard-won through pain and loss, had changed everything. Humanity had walked away quietly. No threats, no warnings, just departure. And in that quiet exit, they had spoken louder than any speech could have. They had forced the galaxy to see what it had been taking for granted. They had forced change through the simple act of refusing to be exploited anymore. The new order was not perfect. There were still disagreements, still problems, still challenges. But now those challenges were faced.